Well, Dr. Austin Tam George joins us next. He's the Commissioner for Information in Rivers State, still on the minimum wage matter. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, while many states may say we've got a challenge, we can't pay, your state should have no problems with this.
Well, you know, we haven't had any problems paying our salaries for two reasons. One, we've got a very committed government there, you know, that prioritizes the welfare of workers. Chamberlain, you probably know that we inherited a very huge backlog of salaries and pensions that were not paid by the previous administration. Pensioners were not paid their allowances, arrears, for 8 months in Rivers State. A lot of them, in fact, died from medical conditions because they couldn't afford even the most basic medication. Workers were not paid, thousands of them, over 45,000 of them were not paid their salaries for 4 months by the Amici administration. So we had this huge backlog, you know, of workers' arrears and pensions that were not paid before we arrived on the scene. What the Governor Wike did was to say, look, first of all, we need to make sure we prioritize, you know, our expenditure profile. We wanted to make sure that if the civil service is in fact the engine of administration in the states, then we must make sure that the welfare of workers comes first. So the first thing he did was to clear out those salaries and arrears, pensions that were left unpaid. Since then, you know, we have not owed a single month of salary, despite the huge paucity of funds challenge.
Is there going to be an increase in the minimum wage as labor is demanding?
Well, you know, labor has made specific demands, but you see, I think that what we are focusing now is making sure that we have consistency in meeting our obligations towards workers. We are not really interested in the exhibitionism of this kind of demands, you know, made by labor. Can we pay 56,000? Can we pay 90,000 or 100,000, as the case may be? That's not our interest. Our interest is to make sure that whatever the minimum wage is now, which I understand over 20 states can't pay anyway. You know, what we want to do is to make sure we meet our obligations. And then I think that as our revenue base improves, as we widen our tax net and get more and more people, you know, to meet their corporate organizations, to meet their obligations towards the state, as we begin to track how our efforts yield fruits in our diversification effort in the state. Once our revenue base increases, of course, you know, we'll begin to look at those things a lot more seriously, because then we'll be moving from simply making promises to actually fulfilling them. So right now, you know, we are focusing on making sure that we meet our obligations without fail every month, to our workers in the state.
But at the moment, that seems to be going on well, is it?
Oh yes, we are paying. We have not owed a single month. We continue to pay. Our worry, as soon as we entered, was, you know, how are we going to pay the billions of naira that we are owed workers? The previous administration, Rotimi Amechi, made it very clear on the eve of his departure from office that not a single cent was left in the account of Rivers State. The past administration received over 3 trillion naira over the course of eight years. Not a single cent was left, and then rather what we saw were unprecedented number of abandoned projects across the state, huge backlog of debts that were owed, in spite of the fact that the state received over 3 trillion naira in the past 8 years. But we didn't complain. As soon as we came, we said we will prioritize the welfare of workers, and we just simply went about, you know, managing our resources in such a way that we've been able to meet our obligations, not only clearing the backlog, but to make sure that on a month-by-month basis, we meet our obligations towards our workers.
If that's the case, then it should be easy to increase workers' salary, because if you were able to meet backlogs and also pay the salaries for that month, I think you talked about 8 months pension arrears.
Yes.
You also talked about How many months?
Salaries, 4 months, you know,
4
for
months,
thousands
for thousands
yeah,
of workers.
in fact, even the arrears for teachers' salaries were not paid for nearly 1 year by the Rotimi Amechi administration.
So,
all that has been
and all of
cleared.
that was met within a period of how long?
Within the period of 6 months or so, everything cleared. The point you're making about whether we'll be able to meet new obligations, of course, as I said, as soon as our revenue base improves, and I suspect it's going to improve because...
What's the target?
Well, you know, what we can't have specific target because, you know, these are very dynamic indices, economic indices. But what we have is something like a tripartite approach. One, we want to make sure we diversify the economy to the point where, you know, the kind of disproportionate attention we seem to be paying on government, you know, employing almost everyone, will no longer be there because in reality, in fact, no government, no matter how powerful, no matter how big, can employ everyone in society. So what we are doing is to make sure that we move away from this mentality that government will employ everyone to make sure we have support structures for small and medium scale enterprises, which was why, you know, just 2 or 3 weeks ago or so, you know, we gave 2 billion naira loan to 35,000 workers across the state. I mean, small and medium scale business owners across the state. The logic is, look, if you are not in the employ of companies in the private sector and the government, and you're starting your own business, we should be able to, you know, support that business, remove the impediments that businesses typically face, like collaterals, before they get loans. What the state government did was to go to the CBN to say, look, we will stand as guarantors to this loan. And when this loan is given to us, we'll give it directly to about 35,000 small and medium scale business owners. And we've empowered them. And this is just the first leg.
So
okay?
do you plan to sustain this? Because
Yes.
we've seen states who came in at that time, because even Benue State complained about the previous administration of Gabriel Susu and how they owed them huge salaries they couldn't pay. So they come with fantastic ideas at the initial stage, but along the line, they run into problems.
Look, we will do this because we've got, luckily, the pedigree to do this. The governor made it very clear in his blueprint for development of the state that, look, we cannot possibly employ everyone. No government on earth can. But what we can do is that those who have the creative energy, those who have the imagination to start their own businesses, we will support them in order to create a shared economy, you know, an alternative economy where even those who start small businesses will not continually, you know, lament the lack of funds. What we can do is to say, look, we will make sure we remove the impediment that banks typically demand from small businesses. Pay so much of collateral or make so collateral deposit before we can give you loans. We say no, we will remove that impediment and empower these businesses directly. 35,000 small and medium scale businesses now benefit. And these are, you know, carefully vetted business owners. We have a central database where, you know, we have their biometrics captured. Now compare this to about 4 billion naira agricultural loan that was taken by the previous administration. As I speak, not a single record exists, you know, of any farmer who benefited from that scheme. The money was simply frittered away, which is why I suspect that this whole lamentation across the country about, you know, governors not being able to pay salaries, we need to look very carefully about the priorities that are being set by these governors. Are they meeting the obligations, or why are they not meeting them? You know, we since in the 80s, there was this endless clamor for states being created, more and more states being created. But we can see that even as economic units, these states appear to be unable to even pay salaries, which is the most minimum, the very minimum obligation a government owes its employers, its employees.
So what do you think? This is another moment where workers take stock and they go back, check and see if the welfare has been adequately, you know, catered for by the state or their employers. In this May Day, workers demand cuts across minimum wage and so many others. For instance, in Rivers State, I'll go back to some of those things that some workers are asking. Mark's argument and so many other people's argument today is about, you know, trying to put this minimum wage hourly, which is not what we practice here. Perhaps that would have been able to help the blue-collar worker or the average Nigerian worker if you know that you've been able to put in this X amount of hour here, and you can go to job B and put in this X amount of hour. Don't you think that's the kind of system we should be looking to get in? You have worked outside the country for many years before you came back.
Yeah.
Do you think it's something that you would love to see that governments across the nation start doing?
Yes, I think so. Any kind of modality that can improve workers' efficiency, a proper vetting of the workers themselves, I think is a good thing. In Rivers State, what we met on the ground was a purported workforce of about 56,000 workers. And the wage bill for the state was about 7 billion naira every single month. Since we came into office, Governor Wike has introduced an advanced, not just the conventional BVM exercise, he has introduced an advanced BVM process that now vets, the actual workforce to see whether these people actually exist beyond the pay vouchers and the payrolls. And you know what the result has been? Over 1 billion naira has been saved. You see, so what I think is a combination of things need to be done across the country. We need to be sure that ghost workers are eliminated using advanced technology. And then once we do that, we'll be able to have, the right size of personnel who will be able to say...
Is the River State doing that?
Oh, yes. Not only have we used the BVM process, we've now moved to an advanced level of biometric capture. All we are trying to do is to make sure that anybody who comes to work, who says he works within the state bureaucracy, has a BVN, has an advanced ID. Without these details, you won't be paid your salaries. And if you're not paid your salaries for 1, 2, 3 months, typically, we classify you as a ghost worker. So I think that in addition to looking for new sources of revenue, we ought to take a closer look, at what appears to me to be bloated workforces. If we're able to do that using technology, that would be good.